Tonight is the sphere of Yesod Shabi Yesod, which is the Yortzait of Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato, and Kanaina, this is my 34th year giving a share on his Yortzait and so on. And usually I try and present important material, new material, and so on, in some ways. So tonight I'm going to treat a very unusual topic, and I'm going to say some things that I've really never said before to an olam. It's quite new, and it has depth to it. So hopefully we can understand it as much as we can, and so on. But in the schus of the Ramchal and so on, I'd like to say some really important things. I think most of us, whether we realize it or not, and many people feel that in our time, in this year, it is a very unusual year. We feel that there's a lot of things going on in the world, where somehow the world has gotten darker, it's become more sinister in certain ways, and many people feel like we've come to a new tkufa, a new era of some sort, where the spiritual level of the world has really descended and really gone down. And of course, with the situation with Iran, and I've spoken about this quite a number of times, the simonim, or the signs of the geula, of the redemption, are really here. So what I thought I'd do, and so on, is talk about two things and really connect them. Two things that are really fundamentally not discussed at all. There's no discussion about these two things really in a real way, and fundamentally, to a large extent, it's probably unknown. But I've done a lot of research on this, and I do a lot of original thinking, and I think I have a certain avenue to discuss the possibility of two different questions. The first question is when we say that the geula, or the redemption, is about to start, what am I talking about? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? How do we know that the geula is here? There are a number of different versions of it and so on, and different possibilities. But is there really any way to understand what is the imminent initiation of the geula itself when it actually happens? Another way to look at it is the Baruch Hashem has said to us in the Torah that the redemption is very close and eventually come. But it's almost like the Baruch Hashem, God has to sign a star in some way. How do we know that He signed a star, that the geula is going to happen at a certain time? And when is that time? We really can't answer truly when that time is, and I've spoken about that. That's because, and the reason why we really do not know when truly it's going to happen is because every time when the Baruch Hashem says, I want to start the geula, the problem is that there are many Jews who would be left out. The geula should have occurred a long time ago, really a long time ago. But it hasn't occurred because the Baruch Hashem is always saying, well, I also want to include these people and these people and these people. So every time He wants to include a new group that perhaps doesn't have the schusim, or the merit to really bring the redemption, the Baruch Hashem says, we have to wait. We're going to have to wait, and it's going to get darker, and it's become more painful. That's fundamentally what happens. In other words, the Baruch Hashem says that the Midas HaRachmim has to become more powerful. And the Midas HaRachmim becomes more powerful, the attribute of mercy becomes more powerful with two different actions. One is an action of darkness, where people know less and less. And then the second one is an action of Yisurin, where life in general becomes simply much more painful. And those are the two actions that have to do with the Midas HaRachmim, and we're going to speak about that. But fundamentally, the Baruch Hashem has delayed the geula, and honestly, it's astonishing when you really think about it. Why is that? The world is supposed to last for 6,000 years, and that's it. But that also includes the Yemos Mashiach. In the year 6,000 is the ultimate Yom HaDin, and in a certain sense, the beginning of Olam Haba, which is the future world. which means that the Yemos Mashiach really is the latter part, the last part of the physical universe as we know it. Now, we're dealing with 5,776 years and so on. We have very few years left. 97% of human history has already occurred, and there is nothing that we see. It's astonishing that the things, that the redemption which Yeshaya speaks about and Yechezkel and all the Nevi'im and all the Haftarahs, all the promises and so on, has not occurred, and 97% of human history has already passed. And it's astonishing that it still isn't here. You would think after the Holocaust, right, that Klal Yisrael went through a terrible pain in the Holocaust, and you think, okay, that should satisfy the din, it should satisfy Kitvugim accusations, it should satisfy that and so on. But yet we're almost just about 70 years after the Holocaust already, and there's no Geula. I mean, we do have the state of Israel, we do have Medinas Yisrael, not from the Zionist standpoint, but there are Jews who live there, and the state of Israel, is packed with Jews and so on, and it's an aspect, there's a certain aspect to a Geula there and so on. But we don't see what's called a spiritual redemption at all. Nothing. Most Jews still live in Gullus, they live in exile in all the countries of the Goyim and the Christians and the Muslims and so on, and we really don't see anything. So the question that I really want to answer tonight is, when does it start? What does it look like when it starts? That's the real question, and can we recognize that? Is it a group thing? Is it a public thing? Is it an individual affair? What exactly is it at the moment of initiation? You see it. So I want to really tell you what I think about it, a precise answer. I cannot tell you when it's going to happen, but I think I have some idea of what it looks like. Precisely the moment historically when suddenly it's here. And once it's here, it starts to quickly move forward. The second thing I want to speak about is another very big problem, which is the concept of Tchias HaMesim, or the resurrection of the dead, which is a shocking thing. The notion that people will one day get up and so on from their graves and actually live again in a physical body is astonishing. It's astounding. And the truth of the matter is, I have not really found many people that understand even what it is. Why do we come back into a body whose sole purpose is to hide spirituality, ruchnius, right, so that we can do mitzvahs and so on? Why do we have to come back to our physical body? It's really the real question of Tchias HaMesim. But the question that I want to ask tonight is not only what it is, but when does it start? You see it? When? And is it in some way connected to the moment of the Geula itself? And I apologize, I do recognize that this is a strange type of a share in a certain way, but I think that by the time I'm finished with this and so on, you're going to have a certain clarity about what's exactly involved in the redemption itself. The first thing that I want to say in answering this question is the following, and I'm going to explain it up to a point, and that's it, because I don't know that I've never really explained this to the Olam and so on. If I go over to a person and I say to him, who are you? I go over to a person and I say to him, who are you? And he says to me, well, my name is, whatever name, Chaim Yankel, my name is, and I'm this person here. So I say to him, well, are you the clothes that you wear? And he says, no, I'm not the suit that I'm wearing. So I say to him, okay, so take off your suit. And then I say, well, you took off your suit, now what's left is your pants and your shirt. And I say to him, is that you? The body in pants and shirt? He says, no. These are simply my undergarments and so on, my just underneath the suit and so on, it's not me. So I say to him, and it's going to be a little bit strange, so I apologize, and I say to him, well, if that's not you, take off your pants and take off your shirt, because that's not you. I want to know who you are. In your opinion, it's who are you? What are you? You're not your suit and you're not your shirt and pants. He takes it off and now he's in his underwear. And then I said to him, is that who you are? Are you the fellow, the body in the underwear? And he says to me, no, I'm not. I'm not in my underwear also. That's not me. So I say to them, okay, so take off your underwear. Now I apologize in terms of, but I'm doing this very specifically. And then I say, okay, I see a person in a body. And I say to him, so who are you? Are you the fellow in this body over here? And he says to me, no, I'm not the person in the body. So I say to them, well, take off your body. Okay? And what he does is, he successfully takes off his body. He goes out of his body. And then I look at him and I say, well, now I see you neshama. I see you're a person in neshama. And then I say to him, well, who are you? Are you the person in the neshama? And he says to me, no, I'm not. I am not my neshama. You know, the neshama attaches itself to me like the body does and like the clothes do. And then I finally say to him, and this guy is a very smart guy, and I say, well, who are you? So he says the following: ultimately, I am nothing more than an entity, a certain type of being called self, where I have self-awareness. You know, what does that look like? It's unknowable. But it's an entity which is pure consciousness, whose activity is a sense of self-awareness, and so on. And then suddenly he demonstrates that by taking off the neshama, this and that. And then there's this entity that nobody has ever seen, nothing, and so on. And he says, this is what I look like at the moment that the Rebbeinu Shalom created me. Everything else was added to me. Now we don't think in these terms, and I'm not going to really go in depth in this. It's a very deep concept that a person is not his guf, he is not his neshama, he's not any of these things. What is he? He is an entity or being that's capable of self-awareness, and that's called pure consciousness of self, and that's what he is, and so on. And he says, this is what I really was at the moment that God created me, or what we refer to as Tzimtzum. The moment after Tzimtzum, fundamentally, this is what I am, and so on. You see it. Everything else came as an addition. You see, and I'll just say this very importantly. When I look at myself and I look at this table, for example, I say, what's the difference between this table in front of me and me? And I say, well, I know that I am, right? I know my name, I know that I exist. This table does not know that it exists. It has no awareness of itself whatsoever. So we think that consciousness, or the ability to be aware of self, right, is another aspect of a person, just like his body, his strength, or his weight or something. There are many different aspects. A human being has an aspect of self-awareness, and the table does not. That is a complete mistake. It is a deception. It's an incredible deception of fundamentally what the Rebbeinu Shalom fundamentally does. He does not allow us to truly know who we are. He doesn't. We think we're this, we're that, and so on. He doesn't allow it. In fact, we will not know who we really are until one day all of this is gone. The guf, the neshama, everything is gone, and we return to our true self, what we are, which is a self that has awareness, and that's olam haba. Now, I'm not going to be mayach on that, but that's fundamentally what it is at the outset. What was the problem with this self? What? The problem with this being called self it has a certain innate problem as soon as it was made. That problem is called Nam Niksufa. Nam Niksufa, which the Ramchal mentions, the Gemara mentions, so on, is not a problem fundamentally that we have and it was given to us in some way. It was really not. Nam Niksufa is a problem that we have by virtue of who we are. So I want to explain really to a basic extent what exactly is Nam Niksufa. Nam Niksufa is almost never mentioned in Kol HaTorah. You only see it mentioned in the Zohar, it's mentioned in the Talmud Yerushalmi, and then you find the Ramchal talks about it. It's almost never mentioned. But in my opinion, Nam Niksufa, which is a problem with the being called the Zolase, who God created, is the single most powerful idea of Kol HaTorah Kula. And why is that? Because the whole reason why God created the physical world, gave us Torah and mitzvahs and everything, was to resolve this problem called Nam Niksufa. If we would not have had that problem, the Rebbeinu Shalom would never have created Gashmis or physicality or Ruchnis, any of these things. He would not have touched it. Instead, we at that moment would have been mukhan or prepared for the situation called Olam Haba. Therefore, if you want to understand anything about your life, you have to understand the problem called Nam Niksufa. So I want to kind of tell you what that is. And it took me many years. I'm telling you, it took me about 30 to 40 years to get the answer. And the reason is because Nam Niksufa is not a problem that we can deal with normally, because we all exist as a physical being in a situation with time and space. There's time, past, present, future, and with space between us and so on. Nam Niksufa is a problem that precedes the physical world. It precedes the Ruchnistika world. Why? Because it was the first problem that suddenly was existed, and right away the Bnei Shem started to create a situation to be masakin or to correct Nam Niksufa. So it existed at the outset, right after Tzimtzum. It was right after the Ein Sof, which is not God, but the manifestation of the Bnei Shem, who has the ability to create something. Okay, Nam Niksufa already existed at that time. You see it, and I'm not going to go into the Kabbalah of the Mashal to kind of pinpoint where this is, and so on. So the Bnei Shem said, I gotta help you with this problem called Nam Niksufa, and therefore I gotta create everything that we see here, which is fundamentally a complete delusion. And I'll explain to you exactly what I mean. Nam Niksufa means bread of shame. What it really means, it doesn't mean that the Zulosoi has shame in the normal sense of the word. But what it means is that shame, if you know anything about shame is a feeling where you feel completely unimportant. You have no importance. Nobody would even look at you. Nobody would want you, and so on. And fundamentally, your entire value is zero. That's called in English a disempowerment. You have no power whatsoever. You are an absolute nobody. That's what Nam Niksufa is. It's a feeling that I don't count and I have nothing of value. I am nothing. That's Nam Niksufa, and so on. And that's the feeling suddenly that the Zulosai has at the moment that he's created. Why does he have this feeling, and so on? Because you have to understand something, and we normally do not think in these terms. The Zulosai at the outset has this feeling of disempowerment. Why should it have a feeling? Because whether you realize it or not, all of us, every human being, is incredibly powerful and exalted, way more than you think. And why is that? Because since we come from the Bnei Shem, we are a chelek elakam imal. We are a part of God Himself. Now, what does that mean? We're part of God Himself. We are a part of God, and at the same time, we are godly. There are two elements to us. There's the part of us which directly connects to God, and we feel godly inside, and there's a part that tells us that we're simply a part of Him, or an aspect of Him. These two parts clash. They completely clash fundamentally, creating the problem called Nam Niksufa. How do they clash? Why do I feel disempowered, and so on? Because in truth, there is no such thing as we know what's called existence. This is all a mirage. Existence is there only in the sense that I am aware. If you close your eyes, what you will suddenly become aware of is you, me, the self, in an act of self-awareness. That is your existence. There's no such thing existence as a process in some way that you participate in and you are. It's not that. You are because of your awareness. Your awareness of yourself is what says you exist. Awareness or self-awareness is itself the act of existence. What that means is something very, very unique. What that fundamentally means is that you carry your existence like a knapsack. Nobody gave it to you. It is your own self-awareness. Since the self is involved in an act of awareness, the self knows that it is because it's aware of itself. That's all that there really is, which means that your existence is part of you. It's not given to you in that kind of sense. It is you. It's something that you're continuously involved in. You're always self-aware, all the time. And because you're continuously involved in this process, therefore you are. So your existence is actually is part of you, or that would call actually kind of necessary. But there's something else about self, which is very difficult to catch also. And I give it the name, it's called centrality. What that means is, every one of you, for example, who is sitting on so on, there is no one in all creation that is you. When you look at outside the world, right, you are looking at the world through the experience of yourself. When you say me, there's no other me in all creation that's like you. It's completely unique. It's like you are, in a sense, are completely specific, like you're like unique. Nobody shares your sense of you at all. The only one that shares your sense of you is you yourself. And that's all it is. And there's nothing that shares it. So in a certain sense, the self is so unique, you can almost say, Ein oid milvadi. There is no one like me at all. Now that's a very powerful notion. If you are the only thing in existence that exists like you are absolutely unique, and that is a koyach of God himself. Like we say, Ein oid milvado, there's no one but him. You can honestly say, Ein oid milvadi, there is no one like me, because there is no one. There is no person that's like you at all in all of creation. Every person is different. So the self is incredibly unique. Not only does it know itself because of its awareness, it's incredibly unique. It is the only thing of its kind in all existence. And that's extraordinarily powerful. And that uniqueness comes from the Banisham. It comes from God, fundamentally. You see it. And it's not shared. The problem now is that when I know myself, right, I know myself in what's called a boundary. What is a boundary? The concept of a boundary. A boundary means that I can say me. Or I can take something and say this. The word this is a very powerful word. When I say, look at some object and I say this, then I'm saying is that the thing that I'm pointing to has certain features which identify it. And I say this or that. This can only be said about something which is contained in certain features or characteristics. This thing, this thing, this thing. Every this has a definition. It's very specific to the item itself. But this means you're looking at an object which has a boundary, which you can actually understand or comprehend. If it has no boundary, you can't say the word this. The problem with the Ein Sof, the problem with God in the form of Ratzon, is that you cannot say the word this. You cannot look at God and say this, because God has no boundary whatsoever. We have no idea how he exists on any level. And you can't say this to God as if we have a way to identify him, because he has no boundary. The essence of Tzimtzum was in the way that he created us, is that, and this is a very powerful idea, what he did was, he took an aspect of himself and gave it a boundary. We are really the Ein Sof, or God, with a boundary. Whereas the Ein Sof it's like God without a boundary. That's the difference. We tend to think of ourselves as something that he created. He never created us. It's not that he ever created us. What it is that we simply come from him, because what he did to himself is simply, he took some aspect of himself, which we have no idea, and suddenly gave it a boundary. And suddenly we appeared. So we are really an Ein Sof with a gavul, or a boundary. This is not easy to understand, and I don't expect you to really grab this. I'm just going through this because I'm going to try and answer these other questions. But I hope you get what I mean and so on, in this kind of sense. Later. Excuse me. I'm not getting to Atzmus, so I'm not going to do that. Fundamentally, the Rebbeinu Shalom exists without a boundary at all, and therefore cannot be comprehended or understood this. We cannot point or know, because he has no qualities that appear to us whatsoever. You do. But still, you are a self, which means that you are aware of yourself, and that awareness is your existence, and so on. And it's a process. And here lies the problem, which is called Nam Sufa. Because you come from God, because you come from him, you feel powerful. because you are very high in a certain idea called yichud. Yichud. What exactly is yichud? Yichud, it's a variable called yichud. What exactly is that? Yichud means that I, with my definition of who I am, my essence or my definition, okay, fundamentally exists. When I say, for example, the table exists, those are two words. Table, which is a thing that has a definition in a dictionary, and the fact that it is or that it exists. But those are two words and so on. And we say, what is the relationship between a table and the fact that it exists? And the answer is, well, a table is an essence or definition which also exists. It participates in a process called existence or being. You see? So its relationship to its existence is that what? It borrows. It's like its existence is actually outside of it. A table doesn't have to exist. It doesn't. But if it does exist, then somehow it's involved in this process and so on. Now you have to understand something. You don't have that same thing. A self does not exist. A self, the entity of a self, is aware. But you are the awareness. Self-awareness is what you experience, which means that you don't exist as something outside of you. You exist because that's exactly what you do. Your awareness is the statement of your existence. You are your own existence, which is an extraordinary thing that's extraordinarily powerful. That means that the relationship you have with your existence is actually together. The lashon that's used, the language that's used to describe that is called necessity. You see it. The mistake that people make is that they think that the only one who exists necessarily where he must be is God. That's not true. You exist necessarily. Why? Because you and your existence are the same thing. So if you are there because you carry existence, it's like a knapsack. Your awareness is your existence, and your awareness is the action of yourself. It was never given to you as a secondary item or as a possession. You see it. So which means that when we were first made, okay, we weren't given existence because our existence is not outside of us. It is us. We act in a way where I am. You know, when you say I am, the awareness that produces it is me. This creates an incredible problem. Why? Because if I am my existence, right, that means that there's really nothing outside of me, fundamentally. It means my existence is me, and I feel extraordinarily powerful. Because if I'm not given existence by anyone, I am it, you see it, then fundamentally I relate to my existence and I feel very powerful. So when I say the word me, I feel very powerful because I am unique. Nobody else can say me like I do in terms of my own name, okay? And nobody gives me existence that I borrow or it's outside of me. It is me. But this is the problem, because there's a boundary in me, because I have self-awareness, then I also experience something called not me. Here's the problem. If I feel me, then I also feel not me, that there's something outside of me. And the feeling that there is something outside of me, because I know myself in a boundary, you see it, and that there's something outside of that boundary, disempowers me. It makes me feel weak, because it means that I am not the only source of my own existence. There is something outside, who of course is God. The fact that a Zulosoi is aware of itself, and it's aware of the not me part, which is the Bonasham, creates a tremendous weakness in the Zulosoi itself. And that weakness is called disempowerment, and that weakness is called Nam Niksufa. And there's no way around it. As soon as you give a self a boundary, it's going to experience something called the outside. There's me, the inside, and then there's something called not me, which is outside of me. The awareness of a not me, where I am not everything, even though I am my own existence, is a source of disempowerment. And this has to be corrected, because it means that there's a disturbance in consciousness. And therefore, you cannot give a being olam haba when there's a disturbance. You see it. Now, it's very subtle, and I'm trying to do the best I can explaining it It's not easy, and so on. But the only reason why we have to go here, I'm sorry about that, is because that's the whole problem of Namlik Sufa. The fact that I have me and not me at the same time. How do I solve the problem of Namlik Sufa? The problem of Namlik Sufa is a problem that I have with God. Why? Because if I feel that I am the only thing that exists, because I am my existence, that's the ultimate power. But if I feel that there's something outside of me that also may exist on some level, there's an outside, that's a sort of disempowerment. And that's God. In other words, the very fact that what I am is a self, an act of awareness, automatically means that I will feel an outside, of me, because my self-awareness has a boundary. So therefore, I've got a big problem in the way I am with the Banacham. I can't have a relationship with me, because as soon as I realize that there's someone else besides me, I suddenly feel like what? That outside of me is what gives me my existence. So on one level, I feel like I am my existence, and on the second level, I feel like I'm given that existence by something outside. That is a contradiction, you see. So when I feel that I am my own existence, that's Eloki. That comes from the B'nai Shalom, who is his own existence. But when I feel, well, there's an outside, there's something outside of me, who also exists, suddenly I feel I'm not unique anymore, and I feel weak and disempowered. And this is what the Ramchal means when he says that Namlik Sufa has to be fixed, because it's a problem in bilis, or ownership. What does that have to do with ownership? Because the only one who truly exists is the one who owns his existence, because he is the process itself. That's the only one really who can say, I'm powerful. And that's the Eloki part. As soon as I think that someone else made me, or there's someone else besides me, then I'm not unique. And that's a disempowerment for that, and that has to be corrected. The essence of Olam Haba is a correction of that. How is that? What is Olam Haba? Olam Haba, you should know, is a nace. It is a nace. Why is it a nace? Because what God says to you in Olam Haba, he says the following, which is really a contradiction. The B'nai Shalom says the following: I am you. I'm not outside you. You think because you feel me and you feel I'm a not me, I'm an other or not me. I'm not a not me. I am you. I'm your background and you're the foreground. But I'm behind you as a background to your existence. But even though I am you and there's no chilik, you are not me. Whoa, that's a contradiction. Why? If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. How could it mean that I'm you but you're not me? That's impossible. The ability to experience that the B'nai Shalom is mamish me, but I am not him, and I can actually experience that seeming contradiction, is Olam Haba. Because in Olam Haba, my relationship with the B'nai Shalom is such that he's not outside of me, you see it, but fundamentally he is me. But yet I feel myself. I can feel myself besides him. And that's a ness. But that's what Olam Haba fundamentally is. Now what the B'nai Shalom wanted to do, he said, you have to solve Namlik Sufa. I cannot solve that problem for you. You have to solve it yourself. How do you solve it yourself? You have to develop a relationship with me. It's simple as that. Why? Because I'm the problem that you're having. My existence as separate from you is your problem. It disempowers you. And if it disempowers you, what kind of Olam Haba is that? So you have to solve your relationship with me, that I am you. But that's not really possible. You really can't solve that problem, that I am you. Why? Because that's a state of your mind. So what the B'nai Shalom said is, I'm going to create something that doesn't exist. And it's mamash yesh me'ayin. You are not yesh me'ayin. You are yesh me'yesh. You come from me. You see it. But I'm going to put you into a cylinder. I'm going to put you into a place which is truly outside of you. Okay? And what is that place is called? That place is called reality. And this is going to be it's a little disturbing and so on. There is nothing outside of you, not really. You think there is. You think that your sight gives you this vision of the world called reality. So I'm aware of myself, and I'm aware of not myself, that which is outside of me. And you think that this is real. This stender, for example, it looks real, doesn't it? Why? I see it, I touch it, It's hard, okay. It moves and makes sound, but it's not real. Why isn't it real? It's not real in the sense that we think it is, because this shtender is nothing more than an image in my brain. It is. For example, I'm looking at this shtender right in front of me. But what does that mean, I'm looking at it? What is a vision? A vision means that light comes and bounces off something. I don't know what it is. The light then goes into my eye in the retina, and the retina creates electrical impulses that go to my brain and creates an image. An image. And I say, well, and that image is reality. So when I'm looking at the shtender, I'm looking at really an image which my brain is creating. This image of this shtender is on my mind. It's not outside of me. My brain is saying, this is what's called, this is what it looks like, or there's something called sight. But there's no such thing as sight. Sight is what the brain tells you that this is called sight, and it looks like this. But it's my mind. Reality is simply a mental experience. I don't know what this thing is. I'll never know. I will never transcend what my mind tells me. For example, I touch this, right? When I touch it, it feels hard. It does. Where is the feeling of hardness? Is the feeling of hardness in the object? That's what it feels like. I'm touching. It's not in the object. It's in the nerves at the end of my finger, which sends certain impulses to my brain, and my brain creates the impression called hardness. But the hardness is not in the object, it's in my head. Sounds are in my head. Signs, hearing, sight, hearing, taste, smell, touch. All of these are what's called sensations that my brain produces on my mind. What is the thing really? We will never know. You know, you will never know me. You only know me through your five senses. But your five senses don't exist. Even though they tell you something called reality, they exist in your mind. I am an experience in your head. It doesn't mean I don't exist. But what I am, how I am, you will never know. Because you cannot get beyond your mind. You cannot. Everything that you know is what your brain creates images that tell you what the thing appears like. But the appearance is a complete creation of your mind, of your brain. And that's it.
That's not reality?
No, there is. We have no way to know what reality looks like. But the truth of the matter is, it's not that there is no reality. Because at the outset, when we were first created, fundamentally, the Buddhism created a self. All you know about yourself is that you're aware. You have self-awareness. That's all you have. This is a little shocking to a lot of people. The only thing you know for zichur is that you exist. There's a me. That's all you know. Everything else is contrived. Everything else is chalomus. It's some kind of a dream that your brain concocted fundamentally as if this is its appearance. Your brain gives you a presentation called reality. Reality is a presentation that your mind gives you. And it says, well, there's something outside of you. There's a shtender. You see? But I have no idea but the reality of the shtender other than what my brain tells me. Why is that? Because there is no reality, not nemes. When the Buddhism first created it, the only reality you had was self-awareness. Me. There is nothing else. Nothing else. But the Buddhism suddenly said, but I'm going to give you something else. I'm going to give you the ability to know something outside of you. But that outside is not real. But I'm going to give you because that's going to become your nesoyin. So let me explain to you exactly what I mean by that. In the end, it has to do with the way we know existence. Everything is connected to that. The Torah fundamentally is a book, it is a sefer that talks about existence and how you exist in relationship to the Baruch Shalom. That's really what it is. And what the Torah wants fundamentally is simply this. It wants you to be makabel the Baruch Shalom as you, as not part of you, but as actually being you. So what the Baruch Shalom said is, I'm going to give you two different types of presentations. Two types. How? I'm going to put on a pair of glasses on your head. A pair of glasses. And these glasses have two lenses. Okay? One lens, okay, when you look at the world and you look everything, when you look, both, and the glasses create something called outside or reality. When you look through one lens, okay, you actually see everything connected. You see the kesher of everything, In other words, if I look through one lens like this and so on, and by the way, that lens is called the neshama. The neshama is a lens. When the self looks through the neshama lens, it suddenly sees things out there. It does. It sees other things. But it also sees the connection of everything. So it sees that everything which exists is an organism. You have to understand something called what an organism is. Because this is what the Bnei Shem wants from us. An organism fundamentally is like a team. It's a bunch of different people working together towards a common goal. For example, the human body is an organism. What that means that every part of your body knows every other part. Your brain cells and your liver cells know each other. Your liver cells know your heart cells, even though they never met. Why? Because they all feel connected. They all feel, every cell in your body feels connected to every other cell, and they are aware of that connection. They know that all these cells are working together to give you a chiyus or life. That's an organism. How do we know this? Because if a person suddenly needs a liver as a transplant and they give him the liver of another person, the body rejects it because the body says, that liver doesn't belong to me. What? The body knows what liver belongs to you and what doesn't. That's why you cannot simply give a person another organ. They have to give all kinds of medications to eliminate the rejection that a body had. The body knows what belongs and therefore it knows what doesn't belong, which means that every cell in your body is never a stranger. It's a chaver. Every cell in your body is a chaver to every other cell. And they know each other, even though they never saw each other and never met. Your liver cells have never met your heart cells, and they never will. Your heart is here and your liver is down here. They'll never meet, but they know each other, and they know that they belong together. When different types of entities act together in terms of a common goal, that's called an organism. The other possibility is a non-organism where everything is separate. Like you and me, when we're strangers, I don't know who you are. If you don't introduce yourself, I have no idea who you are. So there are two types of yichud. There's two types of relationships among things. There's a relationship called an organism where everyone in the chabura knows everyone else, and they go together fundamentally as a chabura. And there's another type of entity which each one is separate. There's you, there's me, there's him, and so on and so forth. None of us, and we don't know we know each other, we're strangers. What the Bnei Shem did was, he took the self, which all of you are, and he put on a pair of glasses on that. One lens of that glass is called ruchnius. It's called the neshama. You see, when you look through your neshama, which is only a lens, suddenly you see things out there, you do. You see other neshamas, but you also see visibly the kesher between you and the other neshama. When a neshama looks at another neshama, there's no confusion, there's no stranger. It instantly knows who you are because it feels that we're part of the same organism. So therefore, the neshama is a lens which unites or connects every object in that reality. But it's only a lens, meaning that if you take off the lens, reality disappears. So the Bnei Shem put on yourself, which is you, a lens. And that lens creates a reality as if there's something outside, but it shows you in this outside everything that's connected. The Bnei Shem then created a second lens in the other side of the glass. What is the second lens? That lens looks at all different things disconnected. It's the ultimate separation and disconnection. What's the name of that lens? The answer is the guf, the body. When I look through my body, through my eyes and so on, I see different things, and I call these different things reality, but there's no connection. Everybody in this room is separate and independent. I see no connection at all. So fundamentally, the two lenses, the neshama and the guf, present a different appearance of what reality looks like. Why did the Bnei Shem do this? Because the Bnei Shem wants you to realize his yichud. And his yichud says that really you're connected to everything. The Bnei Shem wants you to look through the lens of the neshama and see the achdus of everything that he made. But before he did that, he said, I'm going to give you another lens which will demonstrate the complete separation of everything. So therefore, we're confronted with two different versions of reality. Reality is that which is outside, but that's an illusion. But in that reality, one lens tells me the achdus of everything, and the second lens, the guf, tells me the separation of everything. And the Baruch Shem says, I want you to choose the vision of your neshama. Why? Because when you realize that everything is connected, you realize Hashem Echad, that I therefore am the God of everything, because all of it is connected and it's all my hand. But if you look at the vision of the guf, and you let that become your vision, everything is separated, including God. There's me, and then there's God. Okay, he's out there and I'm here. What do I have to do with him? This is the Nisayan. But to create that Nisayan, the Baruch Shem have to create two different versions of reality. Do you understand? The Neshama lens and the Guf lens. But all they are lenses. How did Adam Rishon see? We all know that there was something about Adam Rishon before the Chet that was completely different than all of us. He was. Because he could see Ruchnius, he had a Neshama, and he had a Guf. So he had the same two choices. But the difference is that in his ability to see, the Neshama and the Guf were very much almost merged. In other words, if this circle represents the lens of Neshama, where everything is connected, and this circle represents the lens of Guf, where everything is separated, this is what they look like to Adam Rishon. This. You see that? They're really there's a part of them that are inside the same circle. They're called somewhat coincident. In other words, both of them have a separate part, but they also have a part which is in common. In other words, his lenses, even though there were two different lenses, saw reality through Ruchnis and Gashmis very, very close together. He could see that there was a difference. There was a part of his understanding in Gan Eden that the world is a kesher with everything. And there was another part where the world is separate. But they were very close. In other words, the separation of the two, of all these objects, was not substantial. It was very light. And he had to choose about what's the nature of reality. Is reality an achdus, or is it completely separate? And that tells me my relationship to the Bnei Shalom. Is he me, and there's an incredible achdus, or an organism between me and God? Or is he outside of me, like, Yeshoid Mulvadoi? There's him and there's me. Which is it? So Adam's Rishon ability was very light. But when Adam Rishon sinned, something terrible happened. What happened is that the lenses changed. That's right. And this is very deep, but I have to say this, or else you will never understand really what the Mashiach is about to do. It changed his glasses. How? Because what started out fundamentally like this changed, and it became like this. There were two separate worlds. Ruchnius did not merge at all with Gashmius. There were two separate worlds. They touch each other. They do. But they're two totally different ways. I can either look at the world like a neshama, or I can look at the world like a guf. And the two do not blend together in any kind of sense. That's what the Chet did. And you have to understand something. Why did the Bnei Shem do that? Why did the Bnei Shem change the lenses? It's a very deep thing, and that's what he did. He changed the way the lenses relate to each other, Ruchnius and Gashmius. He changed that. Why did he fundamentally do that? And so on. And you should know something. That's why we die. That's death. You know what it means to die? So I'm going to tell you exactly what I believe it means to die. And if you have an idea of what it is, you become a little less frightened of death. Okay? Try it out. Watch. What does that mean that when we die, really? What it means is that we live in two worlds that are completely separate. Either I live in the world where my lens, the self, looks through a lens called a neshama, or I live in a world where the lens is called a guf. I cannot live in both worlds at the same time. Adam Rishon was able to live in the world, in both of those worlds at the same time. In other words, his neshama and his guf were fundamentally together on some level and separate in a level. But he was able to live in the world of Ruchnius, and he was able to live in the world of Gashmius at the same time. That's why he had no shaykhs to death. He never died because he didn't have to go from one place to another. He didn't have to exchange one lens to another. When a person dies, what it really means is that the self, which is what he is, suddenly leaves the lens called guf and suddenly goes, retains the lens called neshama. Now, when it does that, we say the person died. That's what we say. But the person didn't go anywhere. He just shifted the glasses, so now he's seeing from a different standpoint. This is a very important concept. We all fear death because we think that death is the end. And so if it's not the end, it's like suddenly you're wearing glasses that you look through both glasses at the same time. The ability to look at both glasses at the same time is called Adam Rishon Koydem Achet. Very high madrega. After the Chet, what the Banisham said, you can't look at both at the same time. You can only look at them one at a time. So fundamentally, what happened is when he did the Chet, the lens of Neshama suddenly got a black patch on it. And all he could look, basically, it was very light, dark. He could look through the lens of Guf. He was restricted. He was restricted in the lenses. So that's what we call our physical life. You see it. When we look at each other and we see bodies, what we're doing is, I'm looking at you with my lens of Guf. My Guf lens says, well, that's what you look like. And you're disconnected from me. If I looked at you with my neshama lens, really, I would suddenly see a tremendous kesher between you and me. You would never be a stranger to me. But the hate of Adam Rishon separated the two lenses, so we can only see through one at a time. The only one, now you're going to understand something very important. The only one who could see, fundamentally, okay, now, not through both lenses, but temporarily, even though he's physical, he can have some idea of what it is to look through a neshama lens. It's still possible. Even though he's physical and confined to the lens of guf, he's still able to transcend that and see on some level through the neshama lens. Does anyone have an idea what that person is called? What? No. No, what? What? A Navi. What do you think Nevuah is? See, you think Nevuah is some incredibly magical thing. It's not magical at all. It isn't. In fact, Nevuah is a process. Do you know how many Nevi'im there were? Do you know how many prophets and Nevi'im there were in the Bayis Rishon, in the first temple? Over 1 million. The only reason why we have 24 Nevi'im, all the other ones, because they said things to tell us for the future. That's why we have Sforim. But there was another 1 million Nevi'im that had nothing to do with the future of Klal Yisrael, so they never wrote any books. But how are they able to get the information? Because in some way at that time, no longer, it was still possible. God, the Baruch Hashem, did not take away the full ability that even though you live in one lens system called Guf, you still in certain ways can get to the other lens system called Neshama. And that's a Navi. The greatest Navi of all was Moshe Rabbeinu. And Aspak Amira means that he was so good at it, he could do it while he was awake. Normally a Navi could not do it. In order for a Navi to look at the Neshama, the lens of Neshama, the Navi had to go into a Tadema, a very deep, where his consciousness was completely subdued. Then he could temporarily visit the Neshama lens and see through it. But Moshe Rabbeinu was so good he could see it while he was awake. You see it, which is spectacular. But you know something? So here's the question. Adam Rishon Koydem Achet, was he a Navi? What? No. A Navi is inferior to Adam Rishon Koydem Achet. You don't understand? If I don't die and both worlds are right in front of me, what do I need Nevuah for? I don't have to temporarily visit the other world. It's not a visit. You know, I'm there already. You understand? So technically speaking, Adam Rishon Koydem Achet was much greater than a Navi. Much greater Navi. There's no one near Adam Rishon Koydem Achet. You see? Because his world of Ruchnis and Gashmis, the two lenses, were merged on a certain level. So he doesn't have to visit something. It wasn't an alien life form. Nevuah starts fundamentally from the Chet. because the Chet shut down the two worlds, so they separated. The only way I can get to my other lens and see it clearly on some level, and even then I only have a mara, I have a physical mara. I cannot break the physical presence of emes. I still can't break it, but I can see an emes that comes from a different place, you see. The only reason I can do that is because I die. So death creates nevuah. Shocking, isn't it? It is. That we were, that the Minanushi, that we were once on a madrega where a Navi is inferior. Even the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu, it is inferior. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu died by Neshika, a certain type of death. It was the death of Neshika where suddenly the Malach HaMavis didn't die by the Malach HaMavis. Instead his neshama just was like pulled out of the body because he was so in love with the Banisham. That's because he was so close to Ruchnis already. It's almost like he simply had to like walk out. That's it. We have to be dragged out. Because we are so intertwined with Gashmias that the Malach HaMavis has to come and grab us by the neck and just shove us out. Moshe Rabbeinu was come out, he was Chatzi Yishchat Shelakim. He was half man, half God. He simply all he had to do was put his foot outside. Mazel Tov. It's a new reality over here. But you have to remember something. This is all a game. You understand? It's a game. It's not real. Ruchnius and Gashmius are not real. They are lenses about what existence looks like. Because the Baruch wants us to choose our relationship to Him. Is my relationship to Him like an organism? And therefore it's what? It's Einoid Mavadoi. Or fundamentally my relationship to Him is what? Is separate. Like the Guf says. Yeshoid Mavadoi. But it's a game. It's the greatest game ever held. And that's why the neshama, when it dies, is shocked. Because it realizes, oh my God, I was sitting in a different lens system called a guf. And suddenly it's in a lens system called what? The neshamas. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is very, very critical. I'm not, you could look around for this stuff, but I'm not sure it's, well, whatever. In any case, it's a very, very different kind of a system and so on. But we have to understand, why did God do this? Why did the Rebbeinu Shem separate the two lenses so that now you die, there's death, and so on? And number four, and why did He do that for? Why? And the answer is very, very subtle, and in my opinion, incredibly profound. It's very simple. What really was the name of the game? What really did the Rebbeinu Shem want? He wants you to choose the vision of the neshama, that all existence is an organism, like we are with Him. That's what He wanted and so on. Nice. What would have happened suddenly? What happens if Adam Rishon did not sin? What would have happened? He didn't do the sin. What would have happened is amazing. What do you think would have happened? What would have happened is something called zichoch. What the Ramchal called zichoch. What is zichoch? Zichoch means simply, the Baruch Shem would say, you know something? You passed the test. You took away your Nam Ksufa. Because once you decided to become an organism with me, guess what? I'm part of you, and there's no problem anymore. So therefore, now that you passed the test, you have defined yourself as what? As being an organism with me. And therefore, I'm part of you. You see it. Therefore, what would the Baruch Shem do at that moment? What? He would have made Olam Haba. What is Olam Haba? Olam Haba is nothing more than the full realization that what? That me and the Baruch Shem are fundamentally one. That's all it really is. It's the ultimate ecstasy of an incredible level of yichud. That's all it really is, and so on. So what would have happened to your neshama and your guf? Both would have disappeared. That's right, because we don't need it anymore. I don't need the lenses anymore, so the Baruch Shem would have taken off your glasses completely, bingo, and all that would have been left, like I told it with the guy with the suit. The only thing left is yourself. What does that look like? I haven't the slightest idea. Nobody has ever seen a self disembodied and despiritualized. No one. There is no exception to the rule. Even the Malachim have never seen it. No one has ever witnessed what you look like in your MS right after Tzimtzum. No one. Because everything after that was created to give you a choice to correct Nam Ksufa. So we have no idea what I am. But in Olam Haba, you're going to look at yourself and say, oh my, what is this? Who am I? What? You will be shocked. No one has even seen it. The Tanoim, the Nevi'im, Moshe Rabbeinu, none of them know this. Because no one has ever been in that state. We don't remember that state. We're in this state here confined to our body because of the Chet of Adam Rishon. But again, this quick question, why did God do this? The reason why God do this is to save you. It's to save you. Why? Because the Bnei Shem knew that if you do a Chet, what are you saying to God, really? You and I are separate. I have nothing to do with you, you know? Yeah, maybe you made me, but I don't need you anymore. I don't have to do any mitzvahs and so forth. Once you adopt that kind of thinking, you disappear. You are annihilated, called ibud. Most people don't realize that the result of a chet is not punishment. Punishment has nothing to do with a chet. Nothing. Why? Because punishment is about pain. And pain has nothing to do with the midas adin. Nothing. What has to do with the midas adin is very simple. You exist because you're, in a sense, plugged into God. If you unplug yourself from God, what happens to you? You go out like a light. It's like a lamp. If you unplug a lamp, it goes out. You would automatically go out. That's all that would be. That's called ibud. The result of the midas hadin is ibud. So the Bnei Shem therefore knew that if he allows the chet to become your mental thinking, to become an aspect of your mind, you are annihilated instantly. So what did the Bnei Shem do? He had to separate you from your chet. Wow, your chet is what you chose. So the Bnei Shem had to separate you from your choice. Because if he allowed your choice to go back to you, it annihilates you. That's what a chet is. So how did he do that? So he did something which Chazal called hanoira. You know what he did? He made your chet into a real being. A being. That's right. Your chet became a malach. It became like, it's a malach. It's a living thing. It's like your chet now represents, it is the mind of a malach. There's now a malach out there that comes from your chet and represents completely the whole thinking of your chet. That's called the malach ha'chavola. That's a whole new system. Before the chet of Adam Rishon, there was no thing. Before Adam Rishon, the chet, there was no such thing as Gan Eden, because there was no death. There was no such thing as Gehenna. There was nothing. Every institution that you know did not exist at all before the chet. Why? Because before the chet, either you do a mitzvah or you do a chet. If you do a chet, you're annihilated. That's it. If you do a mitzvah, olam haba. The only difference is between permanent existence or non-existence. There's no such thing as pain. These are shtusim. But to save you, the Bnei Shem had to separate you from your chet. And the way he did that is that he made your chet alive outside of you. But because you made your chet or the malach has the rishus or the permission to be yonik from you. What it does is it suddenly goes into your neshama or into yourself and it pulls out energy. It lives from your energy. It's what they call in English a parasite. It lives from you because you made it. You see it. But it's a real entity. So in order to make a chet into a living thing and so on, the Bnei Shem, in a sense, had to separate Ruchnis from Gashmias. Why? Because once Gashmias is completely separated from Ruchnis, right, then Gashmias has an aliyah. Why? Because Gashmias now says, wait a minute, I'm the same thing as Ruchnis. I also have koichas. I also have power. When you separate Gashmias from Ruchnis and so on, after the Chet of Adam Rishon, then Gashmias suddenly becomes what? By being separated, it becomes Choshech. And the Choshech allows Gashmias to become a separate existence from Ruchnis. And it entertains itself as a real entity. That's why the Bnei Shem separated the two Olamas, so that the two lenses are no longer together. They're separate. So that the Gashmistic lens thinks and becomes as if it was alive and real. So he separated the two lenses so that you can survive. Now, what we want to do now is look more deeply into this. Who knows what is the name of Gashmias that becomes alive and real? What's the name of that? Yeah. What? Zohama. What's the difference between Ra, the Yetzer Hara, and Zohama? The Yetzer Hara is simply the desire to separate from God because you think that you can separate. Zohar is when you actually do separate. And once you separate from God because of your hate, the hate becomes alive and real. You see it. In that form it's called Zohar, which means that something terrible happened. What happened was suddenly two things that happened that all of us are victim. One of them you know, and the second one you have no idea. You are all of you completely in the dark about the second presence of Zohar, which I'm about to tell you. And this has a tremendous amount to do with the Geula itself. The first thing you know, what's the first thing? Death. Death. What is death? Death is the result of the separation of the two lenses, so that you cannot be in both at the same time. You have to go from one to the other. That's called death. It's a temporary habitation of one, and then you go to the other. And so that's why you can come back and come alive. Gilgulim is nothing more than coming from Ruchnis back to Gashmias. And when you die, you go from Gashmias back to Ruchnis. It's like either here or there. That's it. That's called death, and so on. And so on. And that, of course, is done because of the hate. But there's another thing that happened also that's Zohar. It's the single most thing, actually. In a certain sense, it's even more powerful than death. And it's completely invisible. It is. And I had this question. I already was aware of this question when I was 17 years old. And I actually asked this question, and it didn't make any sense. But of course, at that time, I really didn't have an answer and all. It took me many, many years to get an answer. And the question is the following. Okay, I don't know that anyone has ever really asked this question. Okay, but it's very simple. When I look at a person, right, or any living thing, let's say I look at a person, you notice something interesting. The first stage of a person's life is what? What is that called? When a person is first born, what is he? He's an infant, right? He's an infant. And then he becomes a toddler or a child. And then he starts to grow up, and he becomes an adolescent. And then he becomes an adult. So when you look at a person's life, what you see is a certain gradation, an aliyah, from infancy all the way to becoming an adult. The Torah is only shaykh to adults. It's not shaykh to children. Why? Because Chazal say, children only have a Yetzer Hara. They only have a Yetzer Hara, and because they only have a Yetzer Hara, and the Yetzer Tov doesn't really enter until Bar Mitzvah, when the person starts adulthood, there's no chiyuv in mitzvahs as such. You understand what I'm saying? So, and the same thing with animals. Animals also go through infancy, and so on, but not the same way as a person in that way. So I once asked the question, why does a person have to be an infant, and then a child? It doesn't make any sense. Why? Because if the whole purpose of a person is to develop a relationship with God, that should be available at the outset. In other words, a person should be born or made as an adult right away. And then he starts doing Torah mitzvahs. You know what I mean? Why does a person have to wait 13 years to get involved in mitzvahs? It doesn't make any sense. You see? In fact, even better, Adam Rishon was never a child. I don't know if you know that. Adam Rishon was created at 20 years old. He was the equivalent of a 20-year-old person, which means he was created as a full adult. There was no childhood. Adam Rishon doesn't know what it means to be a child. He was never an infant. You know what I mean? He was never an infant. So why is it that he was so different and I'm so different? Why is it I had to go through 13 years of God knows whatever the story is and so on and grow up? Like, what is this? It's a waste. The Bnei Shalom is not responsible for waste. And I had that question when I was 17 already, and I had no answer. And then one day I kind of figured it out. And maybe one day because I'm a therapist, maybe that's one reason probably why. Because fundamentally, we were born infants. We remain infants. You have no idea what I'm talking about now, and I'm going to tell you something in your head that you don't even know that exists. We all know that every human being has a certain need called self-esteem, right? Self-esteem is the person says, something, I want to like myself, I want to value myself, I want to hold myself in esteem, right? That's what self-esteem. Now, psychologists think that that's a need. It's a need. A person has a need to what? To be liked by his parents. In fact, a child's need is profound. You know what a child says? You know what a 3-year-old or 4-year-old child would say about his self-esteem? He would say the following: if you like me, I like me. If you don't like me, I don't like me. That's a child. The adult who has self-esteem already says the following: if you like me, hey, that's nice. If you don't like me, that's your problem and not mine. A child cannot say that. You should know something. It's efsha. The Bnei Shalom took away the ability of a child to say, that's your problem, not mine. A child can't do that. Every child sees you as his definition. If you like me, then I like me. You hear something like that? What a trap. That is an incredible trap. So psychologists think that that's a need. That's not a need. It's not really a need. You know what it really is? It's shocking when you realize what it is. It is nothing more than nam neksufa buried in your head permanently. Let me explain to you what I'm talking about, and you'll realize what every one of you in this room, every person on earth has the following makeh in his head. When Adam Rishon sinned, what did the Bnei Shalom say to him? Because you sinned, you're going to have to work, you will die, all of these things. But there's something in the pasuk that never really wasn't said, but it's the most profound oynish of all. You know what the Bnei Shalom said to Adam Rishon after they said? He says, why did Adam Rishon sin? Why? What did the Nochas say to Chava? What did the snake say to Chava that convinced her to eat? He said, if you eat from the Eitz HaDas Tov Ra, you'll be like God. You're Dea Tov Ra. That's what he said, knowing good and evil. That's what he said to Chava, right? So why did Adam eat from the Eitz HaDas Tov Ra? Why did he eat from the... Because he wanted to be like God. He wanted to be like an Eloki. So you know what the Bnei Shalom said? Perfect. Mida keneged mida. He said, you know something? You want to be like me? Nadach. I'm going to make you just like me. That's what you wanted? That's what you're going to get. What am I talking about? See, the problem that you all have, we all have really, none of us remember what we were thinking about when we were an infant. When we were 1 month old, none of us remember what we thought about when we were 1 month old. You know what an infant thinks about at that stage when it's 1 month, 2, 3, 4, 5, until 6 months? Do you know what an infant thinks about? They did a lot of research on this and so on. And you know what an infant thinks about? It's very simple. An infant has a major problem. Do you know what that problem is? The problem is to distinguish between something which is real and between something which is in its imagination. For example, all of you can close your eyes now and imagine me. Okay? You can all do that. Your mind is able to give you a picture of me fundamentally in your mind. You see? But you know that there's a difference between the picture in your mind and me, hopefully. You understand? There's a difference. You know that there's a distinction between your image of me in your mind and the reality of me outside. How did you figure that out? You know that an infant does not know that. There's no way it knows that because it looks the same. When an infant imagines it's its mother and it sees its mother, in the infant's mind, okay, it's the same thing. The infant doesn't know anything about reality. In fact, an infant has no idea about its own body. When an infant's hand, right, goes in front of its face, it has no idea that that hand belongs to its body. It has no idea. It just sees this thing flying across space. It has no idea, this is me. It takes 6 months for an infant to realize that there's something called outside of me. You mean? It doesn't realize that its mother is real, different from its image and outside. That's why an infant at 6 months starts to cry when mommy goes out of the room, because it realizes mommy left. Before that, there's no mommy left. So then where does mommy come from? You know where the infant thinks mommy came from? From the infant. I created mommy. That's right. When I opened my eyes and I saw mommy, bingo, I created her. When I closed my eyes and she's not there anymore. The infant actually believes that it is God. It is omnipotent. You don't remember this. We all had that same crank. All of us. But that's what an infant is. Because an infant cannot distinguish between reality and image. It actually thinks that it is the cause of everything. You understand? It does. So what begins to happen when the infant starts to grow up? Oh, big problem. Do you know what the problem is? The problem is called Nam Niksufa. Because you have to understand, if I think that I am God, and I create and I annihilate that which is outside of me, because I don't know it's really outside of me, right? And then suddenly I start to grow up. What does it mean to grow up? What's the most important thing we acquire when we grow up? The notion that there's something outside of me called reality. The greatest contribution of growing up is the awareness that there's something called reality, something outside of me that I have to take into account. So therefore, as the infant starts to grow up, something strange starts happening. It becomes terrified. Why? Because it is a disempowerment. Somebody is taking away my Eloki. You know what I mean? Now you may say, well, get over it. You're not an Eloki. The problem is that an infant cannot get over Eloki. You know why? Because an infant is Zoyama in the form of a human. What the Rebbeinu Shem said to Adam Rishon Achachet, you know something? He said, I'm going to make you me, but you will be a Zoyama Adam. You know what a Zoyama Adam is? A Zoyama Adam is an Adam who has the whole machshav of a chet. The essence of a chet is what? Yeshoid Mevadoi. Or the essence of a chet is Einoid Mevadi. I am God. That's a chet. That's the thinking of a chet. I can also be a God. I can also do things in Tom. And because of what? And what the Rebbeinu Shem said to Adam, because of your hate, I'm going to let that become a permanent feature in your head, in your neshama. Which means that that infant which you start out as is you in the form of your hate. Your hate will merge with you. It will affect your mind. And you will think that you're God from now on. Now, what does a God think when suddenly it starts to become ois God? Frightened, disempowered. But that is Namlik Sufa. Namlik Sufa is the Eloki in all of us that fundamentally become disempowered. You see it. So the Rebbeinu Shem said it will become a permanent fixture in your mind. Once it's a fixture, the infant is terrified of growing up. As soon as it starts to relate to reality, as soon as it starts to see other people and realize that there's something outside of it, suddenly it says, wait a minute, I'm a nothing. I'm not God. I feel shame. You see it. So then what does the infant do? To protect itself, the infant knows one thing. I know what I have to do. What I need to do is to get love and approval. Why? Because if this being that I create loves me, I'll accept, if it loves me and so on, then I'm someone. It has to replenish the loss of its chashivas or the loss of its power in some way. And it's able to do that, how? Through its parents. And that has to do with another concept that I really don't want to go into, the concept of zivug. None of you realize this whatsoever, and I will not go into this. Your mother and your father are your zivugim. They're not simply other people, but they mamish have the bechin of a zivug. That's right. To every boy, a mother is a zivug. To every girl, a daddy is a zivug and a mother. And zivugim, the concept of zivug, is very, very powerful. Because what is the concept of zivug? What is the concept of love? Really? What is the concept of love? If you've ever felt that, when you love someone in a very powerful way, do you know what you feel like? You feel like you and that person are one. Love is a feeling of an organism automatically. If you really love someone, you feel like this person is not really outside of me. It's my zivug. It is me. Except the two of us are two separated part of what used to be one organism. So love is where you can have an other without feeling threatened. It's a very big chiddush. If I love someone, then I can tolerate not being God in reference to that person. Because my love for that person unites me with that person, so I am not afraid. Love creates an organismic kind of feeling, you see it. So the infant sees its parent with love, and that love makes me feel, it suddenly makes the infant feel as, wait, I'm growing up, okay, but I can handle it as long as my mother loves me. As long as I love my mother, love me, and we have this connection, okay, then I'm not afraid. Even though I'm an infant, I'm not afraid to lose that infancy. As long as I have the love of my parents, what psychologists call self-esteem. See, they think it's a need, but it's a shtus. There's no reason why God gives us a need for self-esteem. We are what we are. I don't need someone to tell me who I am so I can believe myself. That's a complete shtus. But I need someone to love me so that I don't feel threatened, in a sense, because suddenly I'm becoming disempowered. So the whole need of self-esteem is a defense. It is a defense of becoming disempowered. It's my solution for my Nam Niksufa. So what you see is an amazing thing. An infant, fundamentally, repeats the whole cycle of Nam Niksufa. That's the oynish of Adam Rishon. You see it. It's the oynish of all of mankind. Because you rebelled against me and you want to become me, I will let you become me. And you will be terrified about growing up. You will be terrified losing the power, the godly power that you think you have. And the only way you'll be able to solve that possibility is if suddenly you go into a love relationship with your parents. And that's what self-esteem is about, fundamentally. It's mamash mida keneged mida. And that infant never dies. Never. It will die when you die. It will never leave your mind. You know where it is? I'll actually tell you where it is in the brain. The adult part of you is in the top of the brain called the cerebellum. It exists on the top. But the infant and the fears of the infant live in a small piece of the brain, in the center of the brain, called the amygdala. And that's where it lives. And it's not moderated or modified by the adult cerebellum. It's not. It lives by itself almost permanently. That's why it's so hard to do therapy and so on and heal them. Because people who are emotionally disturbed, their infant and the ability to defend against the loss is too powerful. And I'm not going to go into that.
Central cortex?
What's that?
Is that called the central cortex?
Yeah, what's the cerebral cortex? Yeah. But the point is like this. The fact that we become infants and then children is all because of the hate of Adam Rishon. It is. That's our oynish. Now you may say, how is it my oynish? Because to the extent that I'm an infant and I'm afraid to be by myself an adult, so I will always be immature for the rest of my life. An infant is totally immature. There will always be immaturities left in me in some way or another. Why? Because of the fact that part of me thinks like a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old. And that holds back my bechira chavshes. It holds back my free will. So the Baruch Hashem is a murder cheshbon here. He says, I will save you, but it's not free. It's going to cost you. It's going to cost you your free will. It's going to cost you your ability to be an Adam Mishin Koydem Achet. It's going to cost you an empowerment. It's going to cost you to have what? 100% bechira. You will not have that anymore. You will now have a madrega, much lower. So we pay a price. In a certain sense, in order for us to remain sane, we have to marry our parents. In a certain sense, and that's much more emistic than you realize, and I'm not going to go into the gedorim of that. Now, great. Now what does all of this have to do with the Geula and Tchias HaMesim? That's how we started. But I think you people now have enough of a Hagdama on some level or preface to begin to understand what's really involved, and so on. In order to do that, we just have to now start to go into this concept. Before we do that, I have to be mediyah something that you don't know. I'm sure you don't know. There is one type of a shefa or which is greater than nevuah. Did you know that? It is. There is one type of an or shefa that is much greater than nevuah. It is greater than the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu or Aspak Ramira. That's right. But it has never come down to a world. It has never come down. What is that shef or that or? That or is called haskala. Haskala. When the Baruch Hashem says, Haskel v'yadei oisi, what is he talking about? It's called haskala. Haskala is a shefa or an or, which is from the nun sharei bina. It is much greater than nevuah. How do I know this? For a number of reasons. First of all, Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest Navi of them all. Yet Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to makabel the Torah. You think that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to bring down the Torah for the mitzvahs. But the real reason why Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to bring the Torah was what? Because he wanted the Torah on the level of Nun Sharei Bina. Nun Sharei Bina means that Moshe Rabbeinu understands the Torah in a way where he suddenly sees how everything is connected as an organism. Where he sees mitzvah seichel, the connection of everything while he's in a guf. Therefore, the fact that he was so great as a Navi was not good enough. He wanted to be a Chacham. Chazal say Chacham Odef min Navi. Why? Because a Chacham has the ability to see through Haskalah, whereas a Navi only sees through Nevuah. What is greater? Haskalah is much greater than Nevuah. Why? What does it do? So I'm going to tell you something fundamentally very shocking. Everything will go back once it's at the end to Olam Haba. Well, how? How do we get back to Olam Haba? How do we lose the guf and the neshama and reality? How does it go? Through Haskalah. You have to remember something which is very important. And what is that? What's very important is the concept that we are nothing more than a self with self-awareness. That's all we are. And these lenses called neshama and called guf force us to see reality, or a reality, and to see reality in a different way. Now, here's something very important. The whole thing is an illusion. It's the product of my mind. You see it. But wait a minute. If the whole thing is a product of my mind, and I suddenly understand what reality is really about, if I really understand that reality is not truly there, but these are lenses and so on, and I really understand that, that understanding changes my self-awareness, and that should begin to change the nature of reality. You don't understand it. If you begin to understand the deception which is on all of us, and the illusion of all of us, you can actually change it. The problem is none of us understand the true nature of existence. We only understand existence as we see it through the guf. And even the neshamas only understand it through a neshama. But nobody knows what true reality is, that there is no real reality. If we understood the nature of that kind of existence, you know what would happen? The physical universe would start to disappear. All objects would become connected and so on. Everything, it would start to resemble my Haskalah. My Haskalah would become fundamentally the engine that determines what reality looks like. Why? Because reality comes from my Haskalah. It's a delusion that comes from me. So if I can correct that perception through mitzvahs, Torah mitzvahs in a certain sense, I can actually change reality itself. And that is how the world is nizdachach to Olam Haba. Through my mind. When it says, Umoletz Deis Hashem K'mayim Liyom Chasim, that when the awe of Mashiach comes down, why is everything going to change? Why? Why will it change? And the answer is because that awe will allow you to understand reality as it is. Once it understands reality as it is, and as it is beyond the false deception, then reality itself starts to change. Because it is nothing more than the product of your mind anyway. You understand? It comes from your head. The Rebbeinu Shem created reality from your mind. He took your namdik sufa, and what he did was he fundamentally externalized it, so it now looks like a reality. It looks like physicality. It looks like ruchnius. But these are visions that come from my namdik sufa. In my real things, they don't really exist. He extricated what reality is from us. Reality is schlepped out of you and forced to become a lens. But once you understand through certain chachma that it's false, and you understand how it's false, that fiction disappears. That is the power of the awe of Mashiach. If you want to know how the awe of Mashiach will change the world, what it does is, it suddenly fixes your mind, so you are no longer deluded. You know what's really going on. And because because reality comes from mind, fundamentally, it disappears from mind. What's that?
Different than the neshama lens?
Yeah, the neshama cannot do that to reality. The neshama is also fixed. How do I know the neshama is part of Olam Hazeh? How do I know? How do we know this? I made a statement that a neshama is just another lens and part of Olam Hazeh. How do I know that? Because Ruchnis also has time and space. It is. You're 11 months in Gehenna. Ruchnis is also in time. It is. Anything in time is Gashmias. Anything in time is subject to reality. You understand what I'm saying? It is. Olam Haba has nothing to do with time. Nothing. It's achazman. That means that the whole world of Ruchnius is nothing more than an Olam Hazeh thing. It's from the present world, you understand? That's how it's clear that the Neshama is not in Olam Haba. Sometimes they may use the word Neshama, but they don't mean that. They're referring to the Echida, which is way beyond any Neshama. You see, that's how we know that a Neshama is not Olam Haba. It's Ayin Lo Ra'asa. What do you mean I never saw it? What about all those people who are dead in the neshamas? They see nothing. They don't see olam haba. They see a kesher. They see an organismic reality in olam, in their world. But they're still fixed in time and space. You see. So then what's olam haba? Olam haba is beyond neshama, or beyond ruchnius. You know? Just like the Banishim has no shaykhs to ruchnius, you have no shaykhs to ruchnius. You just don't know it. You have no idea what's really going on in that sense. But you're beyond ruchnius, you see. And Tferes, which is the Nun Shai Rabina, is moidia you. It will inform you of the delusion called reality, and it will change. Now, with this information, where Haskalah is the ultimate awe, the old Mashiach is not the Nevuah. The Mashiach is much greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. In fact, you have to understand the Pasuk. The Pasuk in Yeshaya, Nun Beis, it says the following. You need to hear this. It's astounding. Hine Yaskel Avdi. Behold, the Banishim says, or the Navi says, my servant will become wise. Hine Yaskel. What does that mean, wise? Something is going to happen to him and so on. Because right now, he's in a matzav, in front of me, he's in a much lower matzav. I'm not going to go into that, in a lower matzav. But suddenly there's going to come a point when suddenly he has a new awe called Haskalah. With that awe, you know what he's going to do? He's going to understand the reality of childhood. He will. You see it. And then it says, V'yom v'nosav v'gova m'yoid. So the Medrash says, V'yom, what? He gets higher from what? V'yom me'avom avinu. On the first level, he's greater than Avraham Avinu. V'nosa, on the second level, he's greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. And then it says, V'gova m'yoid, there's a third level. Excuse me, who's bigger than Moshe Rabbeinu? Where are you going? You know what I mean? What's beyond Moshe Rabbeinu with Aspak Emira? What? So the Medrash says, V'gova m'malachei hashores. Why is a human being? He has a greater haskalah than the entire Pamalu Shamala. Absolutely astounding. Why? Because he has an awe that has never been given to the world. The awe is called Haskalah. It's much beyond the Nevuah. Haskalah is the way the self thinks and the awareness of self for its own reality. And once you have that, it's over. It's gone. It's over. That's the end of Olam Hazeh. Olam Hazeh cannot survive Haskalah. And because the Mashiach has a new awe called Haskalah of the Nun Shai Rabina, the whole Olam Hazeh collapses. That's why he's greater than the Malachim, because they collapse with it. The whole Pamal Shemala, the Malcha Chavol, the Malcha Shos, all of them are creations. They are all our mitzvahs and our chatoyim made real, and so on. And they all collapse. His job is to collapse Olam Hazeh, or to collapse the Zoyim of Olam Hazeh. That's the Mashiach ben Yosef. The Mashiach ben David collapses the lenses completely. He collapses the Zoyama, the Mashiach ben Yosef. But there's the question. Now we have the understanding. What does he collapse? When does he collapse? Oh, what is the first thing that he collapses? Well, what's the most powerful of all of the byproducts of a chait? What? What's the greatest byproduct of a chait? Infancy. Permanent infancy lodged in your head. He collapses it. He does. In other words, you know what happened? What happens is that suddenly the infant in his head, he disappears. It annihilates. No human being has ever done that since Adam Mishin Koydem Achet. The Mashiach is the first person who goes back to the Madreg of Adam Mishin Achet, where there is no childhood anymore. How does he collapse it? Well, the Haskalah. In some way, the Haskalah informs him precisely of what the oros are that creates childhood. And you see, it's an open pasuk, except you don't learn the pasuk this way. There's an open pasuk in the Torah that says, Umol Hashem es levavchem. You see, that God will circumcise the heart. So the question is, what does circumcision mila have to do with the lave, right? It's not the lave. And the answer is, the Chet of Adam Rishon created an Olah on the lave. What is the name of that Olah? Not only the Olah on the Yesod, but the Olah on the lave. What is the name of the Olah on the lave that minimizes your consciousness, traps you in a much smaller way of thinking? What is the name of that Olah? What? Infancy. Exactly. Umar Hashem is levavchem, the Ben Hashem will completely eliminate the greatest power of the Zoyim of the Nachash, fundamentally, which is that. And that's infancy. So there will never be, what's that?
Be a great therapist.
Is that what it means?
I'm not going to even talk about what he's going to charge.
Shimon, is that what it means? Vatashes alai kapecha, Hashem shrunk. He said, Adam Arishon. Is that what it means? Vatashes alai
Yeah, yeah. But your mind shrunk. Because you have an infant in your mind is shrunk. You don't even realize it. I can recognize it. I mean, I'm a therapist, but I can recognize an infant in a second, right away. I can talk to the infant also. But that's a whole separate thing and so on. You see, you know nothing about this. You don't. I mean, to you this is all like something. What does it have? You would say, what does this have to do with Torah? You are all deceived. You have no idea how far away you are from any kind of emes, in a sense. That the Banisham has taken your mind and restricted it to a small part, so that all of us have immature parts of our personality, shtiklach, and all kinds of stuff that make it hard for us to relate to another person, or hard for us to, it's very difficult. We all have a child in us. There's a child-adult ratio in all of us. And it's the greatest thing because it affects our mind. So to the extent that you are immature, you cannot be a tzaddik. You cannot do Torah mitzvahs to the extent that you're a child or an infant, and you still have those properties in you.
Can you correct it? Can a person correct it?
That's a whole different shmooze. That's therapy. That's a whole different shmooze. You can't really do it. You can do it up to a point. Well, up to a point, but it's very difficult to do. What I'm trying to say is that the first thing the Mashiach does fundamentally, and that is the beginning of the Gula. Why? Because the beginning of the Gula is the beginning of the elimination of Zoyama. And Zoyama comes in two spots: childhood or infancy and death. Right. The Mashiach in both of them are the first people who look like Adam Rishon Koydem Achet. They resemble him. They are the first people since Adam Rishon that actually have what he had before the Chet. No childhood and no death. That's why there's a medrash that says that the Mashiach never dies. He's one of the people that never go through death, like Eliyahu, even bigger. Why? Because he eliminates it. He eliminates the form of Zoyama that manifests itself in childhood, and Zoyama which manifests itself in the form of death. Which means an incredible thing, because you still don't understand what's about to happen. What's about to happen is this, is beyond you. What's about to happen is that the world of Ruchnius, you need to listen to this. This is going to be a shock. The world of Ruchnius in this circle and the world of Gashmis, which are now in this state, separate, suddenly start to merge. They come together. Do you know what happens when that happens? You know what goes on when these two olamas start to merge? Gan Eden starts to disappear. Do you know what those neshamas are doing in Gan Eden? Do you have any idea? They are screaming. They want to get out of Gan Eden. They want to come back down to the world, get back into their guf, and mezachech the bria to olam haba. Gan Eden is a halfway house. It's what it is. It's a place where the neshama sits until it gets its guf back. And therefore they're screaming, you should know, they're screaming up there to get out, and they sense it, they can smell it. They can smell the disappearance of Gan Eden, and of course the disappearance of Gehenna. Those two institutions, which are Zoyama-related institutions, will completely disappear. And the whole Pamal Shamala is completely changed. You have no idea what is about to happen. But the first instance of that is suddenly when the Mashiach suddenly eliminates the childhood or the infancy which is in a deep part of his mind, and eliminates that completely from any kind of shefa or influence on him. And the second thing that goes with that is the mystery of death. You see it. Now all of this has to happen for the Shekhinah has to go out of Golus. I'm not going to get into that. Shekhinah has to leave Golus. It's Golus in order for that to happen, because the Shekhinah empowers that. But anyway, but once that happens, the whole Bria starts to change. You see it. And that's why he looks completely different. You see, you have no idea what it is to look at a man who suddenly looks like Adam Rishon Koydem Achet. This is not a joke. This is not a small thing that I'm saying. You have no idea what that looks like. If you would have seen Adam Rishon Koydem Achet, you couldn't believe what you saw. The ruchnius, the koiches of that person is astounding, because there's no death, there's no zoyama, nothing. It is pure ruchnius or pure gashmius, separated. So pure and so powerful, you cannot believe it when you actually see it. And the first person that experiences that is the Mashiach himself, and from there, it starts to go off to all humanity. So, what do you think the next step is? Once it happens to him, the next step is what? Yomim boim numashem ki yesh ra'ov v'ovetz v'tzama l'mayim aval lo ra'ov l'lechem v'tzama l'mayim ki neda dvar Hashem. And those, suddenly what happens, everyone is going to start to feel it. The whole world is going to start to run away from money and taiva and covered. Why? Because they're going to feel something has changed. Of course something has changed. The ruchnis and gashmis Olamas are starting to come together, which means Zoyama is disappearing. You know what Zoyama is responsible for? You don't. It's responsible for death, aging, sickness, every type of pain you have is Zoyama. Choshech, Amaratzit, all of this is Zoyama. You know, I can go and I can speak for the next 3 weeks and show you every form of Zoyama that sits on in your life and tone. You have no idea of the absolute sovereignty that Zoyama is on your mind. How your lenses are dark and black and affected by the Zoyama on that. But once that Zoyama starts to leave because of the Haskalah, it's a whole new world. And that is the beginning of the Gula, which means that we don't have to wait till all the dead bodies get up. Tchias HaMesim starts at the moment of the Gula itself. Because the Mashiach achieves the Gula by the Haskalah, and he frees himself from the greatest effects of Zoyama itself. You see, and then it starts to spread to the world, and every person in the world is absolutely transformed into a different consciousness. When Zoyama leaves, you will not recognize yourself. You have no idea really what I'm talking about in a certain sense, because you don't understand the power of what sits in your head and how trapped you are in the figure that you are. When does fundamentally the Gula start? At the same time, in the beginning, in one man. Deep and subtle concepts which, really are not the...
So where are the signs that you're seeing today of the Gula coming? Today?
The signs you see fundamentally, you don't see it yet with the Zoyama, but you see with the Tigboy Sarah, the strengthening of the Zoyama, with Iran, with the whole Parsha of Persia, the story of Purim is happening again. Just like Achashverosh and Haman tried to start the Gula of the second Beis HaMikdash, so the Iran and so on is trying to stop the third Gula, which is the last one and so on. So you see Simonim on it. There are certain Simonim and so on.
Any disappearance of the infant at all?
No, not at all. No. That's the end.
Patients are getting part of the truth.
Put it this way, I'm still in business. I don't know if I want it to go so fast. Hold off 1 month. Give me another couple of months. You see. But look, we should all be Zoycha fundamentally. We're going to put this on YouTube, or whatever the stories, we're going to try. You need to listen to this a number of times. And I only told you a small parsha of really what is in a much larger parsha in Torah. And look, we should be Zoycha fundamentally, that we should all be Zoycha to a new awe called Haskalah. V'haskal v'yudei al tesala l'chochem l'chochmosoi. V'agibah gvosoi v'ashua. Eleim tesalal b'zois tesalal. Haskal v'yudei, it means that you know me with the shefa of Haskalah. Haskalah leads to Tiferes, which is the ability to recognize the true nature of existence. And that leads to something called Hashem Oiz, Tiferes and Oiz. Oiz is power. Power of what? What's the power that we're waiting for in the end? What does that mean? Hashem Yavok, Hashem Oiz Amo Yutain. What Oiz? What's Oiz? Oiz is power. It's the ability to affect the presence or appearance of existence. What we're waiting for through Tiferes, which is Haskalah, is then the ability to manifest Oiz, which is the Zichuch of all the Olamas. We should be Zocher to that, hopefully this year. Amen. This year is a Yovel year or something, it's a bunch of Shemitah, there's a bunch of stuff and so on. And hopefully by next year we can all go to the Kever of Ramchal directly and say a shir over there. Thank you very much.
The title of the shir is Katan Gadoli.
There's a pasuk like that.
So to capitalize it again.
What?
I'm sorry for...
You know what the Pele is? How come there, you know what the Pele is? How come there are 1,000 people sitting and listening to this?
It's called Zoyama. That's called Zoyama.
Now why? I guess Hashem is in the sign with you. Everyone has to get in the sign. והאמסטי הנעדרת state, no? זה פשוט לא, it doesn't make sense to me. To me, I don't know to you, but to me it doesn't make any sense.
I know, it doesn't make sense to me.
It does not make sense.
It does make sense to me.
So again,
So maybe because you see it from a godel, from a different, but it's the dvorim.
Of course. How was that, all right?
there's a lens of disconnect, and there's a lens of connect, and there's
Then there's the elimination of all lenses.
that's self-awareness. Those are the three.
Pure self-awareness,
What's that?
where you feel the Bonachim is you. That's such a yichud we cannot be masigit. That's a mudig madreg of yichud.
What's that called in the lesson? See, you
The Ramchal and the Rosh places all emphasis on the tikkun of the namadik.
He doesn't explain this.
Self-independence. It seems like emphasis on you, not on me subverting yourself.
He does not masbrit clearly. He leaves it out. Nobody's masbrit. This is completely new. I mean, this is a whole different.
So you're
Nobody's
not trying to fit that together with
No,
the Ramchal.
the word bilis means that you are your existence, but he doesn't even say that. Nobody's masbrit. Nobody. I don't know if anyone. I don't know what went on over there. Nobody's masbrit. What's really going on? And on this shir, I tried to explain a little bit of the program of what's going on and how the ghoul is affected directly with it. It's a lot of work.
You know what you say? What's the word for the, when it happens in the beginning of the self? What's that called in the shyness of the
Kabbalah, Rishimu.
Rishimu?
After Tzimtzum, there's a Rishimu. The Rishimu is the Zulasa, the Namatsufa.
Rishim is the Zulasa.
The Tzimtzum is the manifestation of the Oren Sof? What's the Tzimtzum?
The Oren Sof is Mitzamtzum itself to produce the Rishimu, which is the Ein Sof with the Gevul.
The Rishimu is the Ein Sof of the Gvul.
Of course.
And that's the self.
Self is more.
But the Kabbalah just calls it a Rishim. It doesn't tell you anything.
It's something that was by Ksav Sefer Torah, when a letter pops out. When a letter pops out.
What?
By Ksav Sefer Torah, when a letter pops out and you have the left, they just
impression.
It's called the
Rishimu.
Rishimu. It's something that was.
What's in the Neshama and the group? What's that?
It's a lens. It appears later on.
Where's that?
But it's Chalak Eloka Mimah.
In the world of Bria.
That's what?
In the world of Bria.
Bria is the Neshama?
Yeah, that's where the Neshama stuff. The Neshama and the Guf appear in Bria. Yeah, the whole thing, the Abiyah, the Dalar Elomitz, is the Neshama and Guf being created as the lens system to the Midas Hadin.
Why is it called Chalak Eloka Mimah?
Yeah, right. Why is it called?
The Neshama is not. The self is the Chelekim.
Yeah.
What?
Tanya always says the Neshama is a Chalak Eloka Mimah.
Yeah.
Why? Never he's only said.
What?
The Neshama is connected.
It's Neshama, but
Because the Neshama is connected to the Yechida.
yeah, it's the Yechida.
Maybe it's the Yechida.
It's not the Yesham, there's Naranchi, there's Nefesh, there's a number of parts. The only part which is not a Neshama, it's the self, is the Yechida.
It is so.
Yeah, it's closest to this, not totally. The Yechida is the Zulosoi in the form of 10 spheres. But the self is beyond that even. But this is the Nimshal of Kabbalah already. It's a whole different world.
The lens, but the lens.
I mean, the four people that went up, the people that went up alive to Gan Eden, are they Nishmas Mashiach somehow?
Yeah, Rabbi Kibbutz ben Yosef was a Mashiach.
Yeah, but the people didn't go up alive.
Yeah, didn't go.
Serech Basasha went up
No,
alive.
he didn't go up enough.
So what's Serech Basasha going up alive to Gan Eden? What does that mean?
But that's
But
not.
she went there. She stayed
The
there.
Mashiach doesn't go up alive. The Mashiach eliminates death.
Right. So what is it?
They didn't eliminate death. They just went up alive.
What does
I
that
mean,
mean? That they took their lenses back like this when they went up alive?
that's a very good question. Exactly, the mechanics of that is a very good question. What does that mean? The Elyonovi went up. He didn't eliminate death.
It says that Leonov left his body down here.
What's that?
Leonov left his body down here.
Yeah, I don't fully understand the mechanics
But it's not a
about what it is,
Shimon,
but it's
it's
not the
beautiful.
same as Mashiach.
It's not the same as all the Mishnah Kodesh.
No. What does it have to do with Adam Yishkodim Achet?
Because all the Mishnah
But Reb Shimon said
You have an idea who Adam Mission was Kodim? You have no asaga. You know what it is to live in a world like that? I mean, we're talking about different elamas, it's a different existence. It's like, there's no shaykhs to anything.
What you're saying, all that you're saying, all these zaken, this is mamish mashalim that are very, 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 what's the word? Like, clumsy with the nimshal.
Yeah.
To talk about it as lenses is like trying to look something with a robot, with a robotic hand. Am I correct? Because it's way.
Kabbalah is the Kabbalah is written. What Rab Shimon ben Yochai did, he wasn't Megala any or, he was Mechasa the or.
Into Mashallah. But you're also giving Mashallah. You're teaching, talking to us.
This is Nimshal.
What? Yeah, but the way you describe it with a lens.
It is in a way. But it explains what a neshama is. They don't tell you what it is. It's just they call it neshama. But I'm telling you its function and why it does what it does and what the. I'm giving you the program.
I understand.
It's much closer to a nimshal than a much. But of course we cannot look.
It's impossible.
It's about the neshama. We don't sense in neshama. It's not subject to the five senses. So you have to use some shalom, but you understand what death is. And what I explained is the mystic thing. You don't die. You don't go anywhere. You switch lenses.
You read Kurt Vonnegut?
What's that?
Somebody write a Kurt.
Yeah, I never read him.
He wrote about going out of the body.
Yeah, that's an astral projection.
What?
That's astral projection. That's a psychic thing.
Yeah,
People can leave their bodies.
Right.
But it's not a neshama.
I didn't read it yet. I want to read it.
Sure, the Gemara in Bracha says, the Gemara in Bracha, as I spell Kol Tzaddik, a person should, Kol Chassid, they had to die, and the Gemara gives examples.
Yeah.
The simple is the taking a hair from and then the other one just,
it's like you suddenly switched out. The lens switches.
Does the Malcham is part of Tikkun according to this, because he's taking the neshama out of the world?
There are two Malachamovs. There's the Ika Malachamovs is the one who's Ma'abed. The Malachamovs as the Malach Hadin is Ma'abed you for Chet. But the Malachamovs as the Malach of Rachamim kills you.
So the Malachamovs is Rachamim?
No, he's both. He's schizophrenic. He doesn't even know.
And is he part of Zuama, Malachamovs?
The Malachamovs is two Malachim in one head. Oh, good. I'm glad. Thank you. It was good to see you.
Yeah. Malachamovs is his two Malachim. Yeah, but I'm saying he's part of Zuama, and he's taking the guf, the neshama out of the guf, so he's doing some type of tikkun over here.
Yeah.
The Zuama also has to.
But he's a servant of Din and Rachamim. And not at the same time, but his mind is divided in two. He doesn't know one from the other.
What's a personality? Multiple personality.
He's a multiple.
Borderline personality.
And that's the chiddush of the snake. The snake lost its legs. The Sultan is the only malach that cannot see the Banasham clearly anymore. Every malach knows it's an Eloki. The Sultan thinks that he could be the Eloki. He does that so that he will not ma'abed you. He simply will take your kedusha. That's why the Banasham took away his ability to see him. That's why it says loyagin and the malach, the Sultan and the Umas Oilam laugh at the Paraduma because he is the Paraduma. It's Matamat Tameim and Matah Tohirim. He's both at the same time. He doesn't know it.
What are you doing with Kisrei right now?
What am I doing?
With Kisrei Arizal.
What about it?
Are you trying to bring it all to Nimshal?
I'm trying to put the mushal in a real good form, and I'm trying to figure the nimshal. The
Ramchal didn't do all of it.
No, it's not only that. I'm having problems with them in a way. I mean,
what?
I'm having problems with them.
Are you writing about it?
Yeah, because there's a lot here, way more than you realize. But I'm trying to do the nimshal of Kabbalah. I want to know what it's really saying. Right. What is Rishimu? What is Odom Kadmon? What is this? What's going on here? And so on. And I have a lot of it already. I figured out the whole nimshal already of the whole Kabbalah. I just have to put it in pieces.
The proton. Yeah. So I hope you're writing it down.
Yeah, I'm writing it down. Well, I said a little bit tonight. A little bit the nimshal. Just a little bit. Yeah, you want it written and sealed.
It's Chaim. They want a patient. It's Chaim. All right, thanks. I really appreciate it.
Did everyone understand?
I appreciated that.
I didn't. I had. Oh, good. Thank you. You understood it. I hope. It's a little white. It's a little. I know, but I couldn't be makbid on that.
I appreciate.
I just wanted to say for the Ramchal is covered. I just wanted to say it like it is. You understand it good. You don't understand it.
I appreciate it was streamlined.
What's that?
Streamlined.
Streamlined.
I appreciate that.
I ran through the whole thing, like streamlined. From Adam Rishon all the way to the Mashiach to the end of the Geula.
You started the meal at the steak.
But it's all new, but you understand, but there's a lot of new concepts here. I don't know if you grabbed it. Listen to the video a number of times and you'll start to see the whole program. That's my advice. If you really want to do that.
So what is Ramchal mean when he says that Elam Habas is a Shama with the go?
Okay, that's
They both disappear. Doesn't mean it's... They merge and they disappear, both of them.
So then what's the point of the merging?
Because they're two different shittas.
They just after them together.
And so there's only one shitta. But the lens system disappears. All that remains is the self.
And that's what he means when he says...
What's that?
When the Ramchal says Elam Habas both Neshama and Go?
Yeah. I'm not. I don't fully understand what the Ramchal understood. I don't know what he saw clearly. I'm not sure what he was doing. I'm not sure. So this is. It's deeper than meets the eye. You know what I mean? What he was playing with, and so on. But okay. But this is the background to the Nimshul of Kabbalah. Really. It's really what's going on. Maybe one day I'll come and give a shir on the Nimshul of Kabbalah, run through the whole thing, and show you every section what's actually happening. Once you understand it, it's amazing. The system is unbelievable. You know, it is. It's just an incredible system. It's shocking, really, because you realize, my God, how could I have been fooled? You don't even know you don't even know what's in you, what limits you, what restricts you. You have no idea what's Zoyam or what's not Zoyam. You understand? You don't know. Your lenses are fogged. You don't even know it anymore. Because Tidboy Sarah has fogged both lenses. You know? But the one good news is that death is much easier than you think. Just switching lenses.
So once Mashiach comes, there's no more Misa?
What's that?
Once Mashiach comes, there's no more Misa?
Yeah, sure. That is the beginning of Tchias HaMesim with one person, and that spreads to all of mankind. Wow. Are you kidding me? Sure, the Zoyama leaves. It's astounding.
And he's going to be a Yilud Isha? He's going to be a Yilud Isha?
Yeah.
He's going to be a Yilud Isha? Yeah. Is that a steer to...
No steer. He's probably a nice guy, I would think.
But isn't there a certain level of Zuma which can only lead through death?
Yeah, Zoyama normally leads to death, but the process, once the process eliminated, Zoyama will, Bola et ha-moves lo netzach, means that there will no longer be Zoyama.
This is how the shir starts, by the way. This is
Well,
this is,
Like I was just one thing.
Shimon.
Can you explain what the Rizal talks about saying Kriya Shema, right?
what?
The Rizal says Kriya Shema Lamita, it takes away all the created all the Ra,
Okay.
right? How would you explain that according to what you said today?
These are all Rachamim systems. So when you say Kriya Lamita right before you go to sleep, before you go up to the Shemayim, before you see through the lens of the Shema, you're doing tshuva. So it's mezachich, chatoyim, it takes it away. It's a tshuva, it's a form of tshuva, isn't it?
So it's not something with the Achdus, but the Achdus is recognizing that it's all...
Yeah, in the end, you're miyached. You're seeing the world through the neshama, and you're miyached yourself with your own existence in a much truer way, where you feel that God is part of you.
That's what you're supposed to be doing by Krishna Lamita? And that causes that there's no... It doesn't...
Kriya Shema Lamita is right before you go up to the Shemayim. That's why it's so powerful. Because when you go to sleep, your consciousness is mostly goes into your neshama, even though you're not conscious anymore physically, but spiritually you're conscious. And right before you go into that world, you're doing tshuva, so it's powerful.
That's why you have Cholomis, right? Like a little like Nevuah.
Yeah. That's why, right? That's why you have chalamis. That's why a chalam is like nevuah, right? That's why, because when you're sleeping, you're more invested over the side to your neshama. So mameli, you're more nevuah dik. than when you're not.
But
That's
he says
right.
if there's a Zohar, you can break this thing he's saying that you can externalize, like there's a virus, whatever, like they externalize, you can break them. You can break. Because if one creation, you can kill 1,000.
It's tshuva. It's a very powerful tshuva.
And the tshuva is the kriyishma, is the tshuva. You're saying like kriyishma derech tshuva? Is that what you're doing?
Tshuva, you're saying yichud. Hashem echad. That's not tshuva. It's einod muvadoi. It's not tshuva.
It's the ultimate tshuva.
It's the ultimate tshuva, right?
Oneness with him.
You're saying Hashem echad. Every chet is saying yeshed muvadoi. Now you're saying einod muvadoi. But Alamit is better because it's right before you're going to go into the neshama form. And you before, so therefore it's like a hakona to ruchnius. It's probably more powerful, I would think.
So basically, just like I'm sure the neshama lens. What are the mitzvahs? The mitzvahs keep my neshama lens on a clear 20/20. They keep keeping a clear vision.
Empower your neshama lens.
Shimon, I want to introduce you to Shimon Baruch Tres. Mike Tres' older son.
Oh, you're my first older son?
Charusa's father.
I read about your father. It's a choshev. Very choshev.
I told him Yaakov once said the Shmuz in Taradas that Bilam came to a greater dag of Nevuah than Moshe Rabbeinu.
Greater?
Yeah, because he said, because Bilam's Nevuah came from the Ruach HaTumah, so he's able to hit Nun. And Moshe Rabbeinu, any other tzaddik, Baruch Hashem, very yachtos.
Moshe couldn't hit the nun.
Moshe couldn't hit the Nun. That's what he said.
Who said this? Where did he see this?
He sent him an email, I don't know what to tell you.
No, he said in a shmuz. No, it's Taradas.
I'm talking 50, couple of years ago, 53 years ago.
I can see a svara like that. I can see the svara. Because the nun is in the klippus. The shchin is in the klippus. The nun is with it.
He didn't go through the whole thing, he just happened to say it.
Yeah. Well, I could see a shtick. I could see a shtick of that. Yeah. So did you understand the shit tonight? I mean,
Absolutely not. I have to absorb it. You think I can take it on the surface? It has to
you gotta listen to it over and over. And
I
over.
was just telling him before, we're hearing a lot of the same with a build-up, and it's the same conviction. You're building on the same platform, but adding to it. Mamish, Rav Shmuel. What there is not to know.
Where you coming from now?
What's that?
What was your last trip?
Yeah, what's with the Pashtuns? So they didn't know.
No, not yet.
Are they? Is it outside of the
They could be very well be. Yeah, so it's just
Ken?
could be.
I was very excited. They were on the highway. I thought this is it, and then everything died down.
The shtick died down.
It did. What happened? It did die down. All excited. Kitrugi, Masa, Han Mosa. I'm sure there's not enough left time. Tafshin Ein Zayin. How much? There's not much time. I looked up in the Shimon. I was almost had tears. Right? You're right. He has this money calculated, 750 in Spain. He's sitting, and he's breaking all the psukim. And this is it. This is it. This is it.
When? What year?
Huh? He has it. I mean, he has the cheshbonis and the psuk, everything. This and b'diuk, and that's why.
They don't know the
Chol of
pasuk.
Kaitz, Avar Zev, Anachnu Lo Shanu.
The pasuk that is Megala when nobody has ever been able to figure it out.
Okay, fine. It's it.
Only Yaakov and Daniel knew it. Maybe Yosef also. Nobody else ever knew.
Eidan ve'Eidan utrei.
Yeah, Idon, Nayim, Adonim,
Yeah.
yeah.
To plug Eidan.
So what do you think? You understand?
To a certain level.
So I know.
So people.
Sorry.
Where you come from, Shimon? What was your last trip?
Yeah, what's that true? Let's hear some of the nitzitzes you were sharing from different.
Where'd you go?
I was in the Atlantic Islands, the Azores, the Tenerife, Canary Islands, Barcelona,
Barcelona?
Yeah.
You went to Barcelona?
How long ago was
a year ago.
That was your last trip?
I've been to 226 countries.
For a whole year?
Are there 226 countries?
I didn't go.
86.
I have very few countries left.
What's left? How many are there in the world?
226 countries.
How many are there? There are so many countries in the world.
There's about 195 in the United Nations, and the rest of them are sovereignties, but they belong to other countries. Like but they're really they're themselves. Like Tibet. Tibet is really a country, but Tibet is controlled by China. So do you count it? You don't count it. So there's a machlokes we showing them on that.
What's in Barcelona? Are you able to see anything? Ramchal, do you say brachos everywhere you go?
No.
You know, you heard of a Yid by the name that there was a Yid who wrote a sefer called Meishari Mogid. He was a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah.
And we go to all these remote areas in the
Yeah.
world. We'll take a fruit and we'll sell a whole.
It is reprinted.
Yeah. I would love to see it. Wow.
It's a very strange. I mean, it's not strange, but it's. He had a maggid.
He did. He also.
Yeah, it's a magid, the malach one.
Actually had a maggid. You read the sefer. Barry was very into it.
Oh, Barry's into it?
Barry,
Yeah. I heard about it. I never saw this. Meishari Mogid.
it is reprinted.
From the
Wherever he went, he had a local guy like used to come to him that when he went there, it was an Arab or it was a quarter on the ship.
What do you mean? You don't drink?
Who?
You don't drink when you go places? Of course you make brachos. What do you mean?
No, what I meant, of course, I meant that to do it with the, that's not, of course. Like he did, he would take a bedam, he would take a shot, he would take a drink on some.
How many countries are there total?
There's 195 countries in
No,
the
but
United
saying
States. Oh, in actuality?
What's it, can I get?
Probably if you really count it, a lot of certain countries are dangerous.
Okay.
You can't go to Algeria, Sudan. It's a very dangerous countries. You know, Iran, Iraq. I mean, Iran maybe a little bit, but you know.
you were there in Iran?
Where? No.
You never in Iran?
No, I never went
Saudi
to
Arabia
Iran.
you were in, no?
No.
Libya, you said you were there right before
Yeah,
the
Libya. I was in every Arab country. Libya, Lebanon.
How about Morocco?
Yeah, sure.
How was Morocco?
Nice. It's very, yeah. Morocco's interesting.
But you did in Iran.
Yeah, Moroccans.
My mother from Wazan, from a city up north.
Yeah, Tafi Laut had, Baba Sali was there.
Okay.
You ever went to the North Pole? South Pole?
I was in Antarctica, yeah. And it's Antarctica and Falkland Islands. I did every country in South America, North America, every country in Central America, every country in Europe, every country in Asia, just about. Almost every country in Africa, the whole South Pacific. I'm telling you,
Which country
I've been
stands
around.
Which country stands out?
What's the goal? What's the goal when you go to a country? What do you do?
Elokus, I'm sure he's looking to it.
He's looking for the yichud.
No, he wants to say the thing.
I have the ability to feel the ruchnis of a country and of the people, to see what is. What's that? I can see when I talk. I'm metapa with the people to see what is their psyche.
How do you talk to them?
Well, there's some of them speak English. You can speak to them.
Not everyone.
Not everyone, but you could.
What would you ask them?
What's that?
What would you ask them?
I ask them about their life. What the life is. What are the concerns of their life? I look at their religions. I look at their customs. I mean, you could see the ruchnis. You could see a tremendous amount about Zoyama. How much identified, see a lot.
Which country stood out the most for you?
226. In what way?
I don't know, in your way.
Those are the lowest.
I was in Egypt a year ago. Now you're in February.
Dangerous month.
What?
It was a dangerous time
Yeah,
to go.
I went there for 2 weeks and it was perfect. As soon as I left, it was already about me. Who? Yeah, in Egypt. Yeah, I was there. About years ago, 15 years.
There was Rabbi Yaakov. What's his name? Forgot.
Damano. You can't go to Damano now.
Go to Damano.
They won't let you go. I know they won't.
Rabbi Yaakov Kasufi. There was another one. Kasufi there. Chamawadia spoke to last guy Mubarak. Asked him to rearrange a whole road.
And he did? For Avad Yosef he did.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
And asked him for a bracha.
Went to visit the pyramids?